The video that you're about to watch is actually an introduction to one of the Zoom meetings of the crystalline movement. But when we listened again to it, we realized that it had so many important elements that it was important to make it available to a larger group than just only the members of the crystalline movement. Yes, there are a few terms in that for those who are not a member of the crystalline movement may be or sound unfamiliar, but it's not really relevant for the essence of the message. So listen to that from the perspective of the essence, not so much about some of the details. In it, I mentioned, for example, the crystalline council, which is the one that helps throughout the universe to work with crystalline energies. You don't need to know that to understand the message. And the message is actually very simple. We have the power to create anything we choose to create. We bring in the energies for change. We are not depending on the outside. It all depends on our inside. And I think that's an important message. So I would say enjoy the video that you're about to listen to. If there is one week that I've been pondering a lot, it was, I think, this week. So what I would like to do is give a slightly different introduction. As you may understand by now, that most of it is also to a little bit of inviting continuously to change the way we think. Because we have all been so unbelievably programmed that we tend to think a certain way about reality, a certain way about development, a certain way about what we can and what we can't, about our power or lack thereof. And one of the things that I think is the most important thing is to understand how powerful we actually really are. So let me begin with an image that I showed you a couple of weeks ago, because that is basically my point of pondering, and that is this one. So this is the point that Daniel and I climbed to, that, I've given it different names, but basically the name is that it is an induction point that allows us to connect through this portal to the full potential of what the crystalline council can offer. Well, that is such an unbelievable statement. When I heard that, it's like, yeah. We cannot even go to a certain frequency, and now you talk about the full potential. And what it brought up is this whole thought in me, and that is what I'd like to share with you, is, okay, why is something like this happening? What determines that new energy is coming in? What determines that this point that you see here came into being, so to speak? Or, well, it was actually the point that we went to before, so expanded, let me use that word in this moment. Well, Gary and I talked about it a couple of days ago already. One of the things that I find so fascinating is a belief that we have that everything is more or less happening to us. The universe sent in new energies. There are coming all kinds of things in from everywhere, and here we are at the receiving end, and we are sometimes overwhelmed and all that kind of stuff. So you can look at this point and say, well, this has been given to us. In all that way of thinking, we place the power outside of ourselves. We think that the universe, or they, or those extraterrestrials, or the council, or whatever word we give to that what is outside of us, are the ones who are doing it. Now, the big question you have to ask yourself, do you truly believe that that is how things work? Or is it possible that things work in a different way? The universe has infinite potential. And what of that infinite potential, whether it is through a point like this, is coming to us here on Earth? What determines that? Well, some of you say immediately, oh, yes, of course. And others will say, nah, that can't be true. We are determining it. It is consciousness that determines when something of a potential is set into motion. So nothing will happen unless there is a consciousness that induces something. Which means that if there is no signal from our consciousness as co-creators of this planetary system, if we are not giving a signal to the universe, nothing will happen. It is the fact that we, and it doesn't matter how big the we is, but every we or even little I can set things into motion. Because our consciousness, whenever it has a certain vibration, literally will set things into motion in the infinite possibility system of this universe. And that is why we suddenly experience things to come in. This point that you see here came in because of all the work that has been done in the crystalline movement, and by other people who work with crystalline energies. So at a certain moment, the signal into the universe is strong enough for the universe to say, hey, they're ready. And the universe, so to speak, the potential, the infinite, the creator, I don't know how to call it all, but is responding, and bam, there is this point. With this fullness of the potential that this point now has, due to the fact that we have given the signal, we are ready. So the whole thing, and that's why I showed you this image. So when we are talking, and you can feel into it or whatever or not, and you get the or you have the image, but we'll send it again for those who, for whatever reason, lost it. You can look at this point as a symbol for the power that we have to send out messages into the universe that then needs to respond in creating, let's say, expanded potential for this planet. And that is why it's so important to work continuously on our expansion, because that means that we are then sending out more and more messages that will allow the evolution of this system to go into the direction that we can call fulfillment of potential, because as soon as something is set into motion, there is a potential, and that potential wants to be realized. This potential that has been induced now wants to be realized. I have no clue what that means, but it doesn't matter whether we know what it means or not. What is important is what you see here is what happens with many, many portals and other places, and they are all a reflection of a field that has been added to allow this earth to evolve and evolve and evolve without any limitations. And as soon as we think there's a limitation, we put a limitation on it. It's like slamming the brakes, right? And we don't want to slam the brakes. So that's why I bring this point back up, because it induced a lot of thinking and a lot of pondering on, what does that mean? So let me go immediately to the second image. And that is also very well known. That is why this is so important. And I've mentioned before that if you go to what we call level 3 consciousness of our world, in which we awaken through the 4th and the 6th group of 12 layers, that is the basis from where all those signals are going out, that expand the potential, and with that stimulates also evolution. Because the first thing is we send a message out to the universe. Second thing is the universe responds. There comes portals, energy fields, whatever. Yeah. And then the next step is, okay, now we need to use that potential in such a way that evolution is actually happening. And for that, we need those 3 levels of consciousness. All the other levels, and we will work with some of that in the future, because as soon as you go into other layers of higher layers of frequencies of crystalline energy, we work with other aspects of consciousness, but it can only be added, so to speak, to those 3, because this is who we have chosen to be in this lifetime, in this 4th world. Those who are developing those 3 levels of consciousness as the foundation for contributing as a collective to the evolution of this planet. So, step in your power. Don't believe for one thing that it's all coming from outside of you. No, it's one huge system where we are players in, and the way you play it is determining what you will experience and what you contribute. So the crystalline movement has so much potential in contributing to this process that, I always have the feeling that we just begin, but at the same time, it's nonsense, because so much is happening right now that we know that we are contributing to this beautiful development that is taking place. And yes, you can choose to go into all that doesn't work. And there is a heck of a lot that doesn't work in our society. Yeah. But there are 2 things that then is happening with you. In the first place, you focus on the wrong things, because the only thing that you need to focus is on how you want to help expand and grow, so that that will be the focus of your life. That is what you want to strengthen. In the second place, you have to realize that when you're focusing on that what doesn't work, you cannot grow. You cannot go, you go into the survival, the physical and the mind system, and you get stuck in those 2 groups. And if you're happy there, by all means, but if you want to get out of it and stimulate it, you have to move into the 3rd level. Because then you begin to see that it is not about us humans. It is about us humans having a place in the whole. We are all relatives, the all. And we need to find our place. We cannot do it without the bacteria, fungi, plants, trees, animals. We are all needed. And that understanding is still for many people difficult. Well, if you truly understand your own system, you will see that you cannot live without bacteria or without fungi, or just name it. And that we cannot live without plants, we just can't live without plants and trees. And that the animals are the ones who brought in the understanding of, let's say, interaction while moving. Yeah. And I don't want to go into that today, but that will be maybe something for the future, how important animals are, as much as we don't like some of them or are afraid of some of them or whatever, reflecting, the messed upness of our world, right? Anyway, so this is my introduction for today, the understanding. And I will bring that many times in many slightly different ways, because it's so important for us to not only hear it, but let it sink in. And then from there, work with it. I believe in this planet Earth and its evolution, even though as a ecologist, I have had my time, but in which I believed, we are too late. As an ecologist, I still believe that, but not as a metaphysical ecologist, because I know that consciousness can change things so unbelievable fast. But we have to make sure that we connect with that consciousness that can do it. And that's why we are going again today through the individual layers of fourth and the fifth and the sixth group. Yeah, expanding, and growing, so that we really build that foundation that we need in order to fulfill our role here. Yeah, and I like to repeat, it's our role within the context of the whole, because every living being has its own role. Yeah, and sometimes I can grumble when, certain insects are doing certain things that I don't want them to do. My beautiful loving cactus was completely covered with aphids, and so immediately I remove the aphids, and then later it's like, oh boy, what am I doing? I'm influencing the whole thing in my so-called love for my cactus. Anyway, there's a little side note. It is that program that we have where we want to influence things in certain ways. Anyway, we can go into all that, but then it will be more from a fun and joking sense to see how funny we still behave, thinking that we are evolving. Anyway, at the same time, we support each other to move continuously into this understanding that we are all relatives and that we are all related to each other.